Hello, welcome to the Black Etc. podcast, a podcast about how ideas and culture spread amongst Black Americans, especially outside mass media. I'm your host, Ian Youssef. Today's guests are Alima Wheeler-Trapp and Ali J. Wheeler of the Black Arts and Culture Preservation organization, the Black Canon. Alima and Ali are from Detroit. They are siblings, and they have made it their mission to preserve and display the impressive collection that their father, the late James E. Wheeler, amassed over his lifetime. The collection is film memorabilia, posters, playbills, vinyl records, and other Black cultural artifacts. As I was thinking about starting Soul Food, etc., where the ETC has expanded the canon, I was researching a lot of ideas about the Black Canon just to get in the right headspace. And they came up pretty quickly, their organization, the Black Canon. And I reached out to them, and they were very gracious and helpful. And we had a good talk about their work and my work and the idea of canon. So I thank them for helping me on my journey as I think about the idea of the Black Canon and applying it to Black food and soul food. In the interview, I talked to them about their father, how he came to collect so many items. I think they said it may be around 40,000 pieces at this point. We spoke about the mission of their organization, the Black Canon, as well as practical concerns for preserving and sharing such a huge collection of sometimes fragile memorabilia. We even got into the stylistic differences of film posters over time and how commercial pressures have changed what they looked like. This conversation was really valuable to me, and I'm sure you'll find it valuable as well. I'm here today with Alima Wheeler-Trapp and Ali J. Wheeler, the brother-sister team behind the arts organization and archive, the Black Canon, which is committed to preserving and promoting African-American literary, performing, visual, and media arts. They have one of, if not the most impressive and thorough collections of African-American film and media memorabilia. Welcome, Alima and Ali. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Glad to be here.
I would like you two to explain how your collection came to be. I think in order to do that, we have to talk about your father, the late, great James E. Wheeler. So who was your father, and how did he come to amass such an extensive collection of Black film and art artifacts?
Okay, I'll take that one. Yeah, my father, James Wheeler, he wore a lot of hats. He was a collector, a historian, an actor, an activist in his days as well. Well, his story, he grew up in Arkansas, Stamps, Arkansas to be specific, but our grandparents had a juke joint, like you might have seen in the movie Sinners. Not quite to that extent, exactly, but they, showed all Black films in the day, and they were distributed primarily throughout the South, self-distributed because they didn't have the Hollywood distribution system. And my father, he says 5, 6 years old, one of the first movies that really resonated with him was called The Blood of Jesus. And when he saw that movie, he just fell in love with Black film, and he kept the poster. He kept the film, and he continued to do that throughout his life, and just realized maybe he had the foresight to say these things, protect that history. The collection started with that, but then he began collecting records as well. Anything to do with Black culture, magazines, newspapers, press books, playbills, all of those things to deal with Blacks in the arts. But it started when he was around 5 years old. He didn't make it an actual business until like the 1980s. We realized we had a lot of stuff in the house, but that's when he started creating exhibitions and bought us a small building in Detroit where he would host film screenings and display the posters. So how did he do it? It's kind of hard to tell how he got so much stuff because this was pre-internet. So they had trade papers. Movies Collector World was one of them. Gold Mine, different trade papers that he would find where people had these things, and he would go sometimes travel throughout the country, him and a couple friends, and get these collectibles and bring them back and try to preserve them.
Mm-hmm. I've heard you estimate that there are about 40,000 pieces. What percentage of the current collection comes directly from your father? And how much did you all collect or have stuff donated to you after the fact?
I would say 99% of what we have comes from our father.
Oh,
Since we've started the Black Canon a couple of years ago, we have received some donations from a few people, a couple of books, and we actually received some movie posters, courtesy of Cheryl Day, who's also in Detroit and who had a similar love for collecting. But since we're actually making this a business and facing the forefront and displaying it, she decided to donate some of her rare collectibles to us as well. But I'll say that's probably 99.5% if you include her stuff.
when I think of the concept of the Black Canon or canon in general, I think of ideas. I think of the works themselves. I never thought of canon as something tied to material items and preservation until I came across your organization. Why do you use the lens or metaphor of canon for the work that you do?
Yeah, I can take that one. So I thought this is a really good question. I know that a lot of times when people first hear canon, they may be along the lines of what you're thinking through a metaphorical lens. Maybe it's ideas. A lot of people's first, intuition is to think of books because, you see a lot of articles and opinion pieces about the literary canon, and what works should make the literary canon. So in our case, we were really inspired by a definition of canon as the most important and influential works in art and culture. And it's literary canon adjacent, but we thought that definition really reflected the work that our father did to amass such a massive collection. So, what he built through film and posters and photographs and albums, all of that stuff really documents a century of Black storytelling. So we kind of look at it as a cultural canon, and maybe not the literal definition, but as we even studied, what canon could mean or how it could be interpreted, there are a lot of layers that resonated with us beyond just the metaphor. We found that some canons are community-based. They could have works that are from creators. No two are the same. They change generationally. So there are a lot of aspects to just the elusiveness of canon that we thought reflected what we were trying to do with our work very well.
Mm-hmm. Why is material preservation so important for maintaining Black cultural memory?
It's important because, the items that we have or that other collectors may have, they represent tangible evidence of accomplishments. And we talk about the periodicals and the music and the viewpoints at various points in time for African Americans. And a lot of African American history has been passed down orally, and the material preservation sometimes has a greater impact.
I wonder why that is, though. I mean, what is it about the material? Is it the case that things are more likely to get lost or they can be ignored if there's no tangible evidence of it?
Well, yes. I mean, there's actually efforts in some realms to, history is at risk of being erased in some instances, especially, absolutely. From textbooks and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And like I said, oral history is one thing, but when you could actually show that has a greater impact on you, and those who may not be aware, where you could actually see something visually or touch something, has a greater impact on in history and telling those stories. But in my mind, and really, it's so important for us to keep this stuff because we've seen pieces actually being moved from museums or historic venues recently in the last couple of years. So that's why it's important for us to have this tangible evidence and actually try to control the narrative of the storytelling that we would like to portray from the Black Canon.
Yeah. There's a new book from Howard Bryant, the sports writer, about Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson. It's in part about this, how Robeson was particularly erased from our history, from American history, and even in some instances, Black history. So I was really happy to see that you all have an exhibition of Paul Robeson items to make sure that his memory is preserved.
Yes, he was a very important figure, and our father educated us about him when we were children. We didn't get that in our school books either, even coming from a city such as Detroit that does a fairly good job of talking about culture and history, but what he accomplished as a Thespian, and he got labeled, and there were some communist themes, with him, but there are themes that follow along with the Black Panthers and others as well. So that's part of why they tried to erase him. But athlete, thespian, activist, just a brilliant man, Paul Robeson.
What unique challenges do Black people face in trying to preserve our material culture?
I think some of the challenges are awareness, just in terms of if things are just always around, or if, your elders are telling you stories, like you may not know how critical it is for you to capture those things. You see some of the articles and people talk about how like recipes aren't written down, and they're encouraging people now at the holidays to like record, their grandparents making their favorite dish or things like that. Or maybe just things are around the house that just represent the household, not knowing that those things should be kept and preserved because they'll have an impact on the future. So I think some of it is awareness, or just not knowing that they should preserve material history and some of the oral history. And I think resources are another challenge. If you do have things beyond photographs or magazines, if you have digital things or you have things that are at risk of being vulnerable, how do you protect those and preserve them? Like, do Black families have the resources to do that? And I think a lot of it too is, do people have the patience and discipline to actually preserve material culture? We get congratulated a lot. We're doing it because our heart is in it. We want to keep our parents' legacy alive, especially the work that our father did. But we have people come to us and say, like, congratulations for you to have the discipline where you're not throwing this stuff away, or you're not trying to just sell it immediately where someone else might just hoard it and not, let people have access to it. And it's a very time intensive, you have to be committed to it. And I think that's another challenge that our community might face, in terms of like, do they have that patience and discipline to try to do the work to preserve material things relevant to our culture?
Mm-hmm. In New Orleans, Dillard University has the Ray Charles Program in African American Material Culture, dedicated to preserving our culture, particularly through Black foodways. Have you partnered with other such organizations and programs in the country?
Well, we are starting to partner. That's a big goal of ours, to engage with universities, especially because we feel like these artifacts and the stories that we want to tell, we want to really reach the youth. And we have begun building partnerships with Wayne State University, University of Toledo, Center for Creative Studies, Pensacola Lewis College of Design in Detroit, as well as Michigan State University. But as we continue to build credibility and have exhibitions, we hope that footprint will expand more universities and as we continue on. So that's definitely a goal of ours. Maybe to house some things at certain universities if we find that there's a certain theme that resonates with those particular universities. But right now, we want to make sure they're aware of what we're doing. Maybe provide pop-up programming in the interim. We've had professors from some of those schools engage with us recently, as well as I just spoke with someone at Paul Quinn, which is a little known HBCU here in the Dallas area. I'm engaging with him as well.
A lot of the material that you have, especially the film stuff, is the result of Black artists and print companies producing these posters for Black films in the early days. To what extent do you document the history and information on the creators of the Black film posters, etc.?
So that's definitely a goal of ours. Our dad did a really great job of actually preserving the posters themselves, like the physical artifacts, the playbills, the press books. We are, kind of going a layer at a time. So first trying to understand what we have. So posters were first for us. So we do have, a searchable database that tells us what posters we have, what measurements they are, key actors, if they have any damage to them. Another layer that we'd like to do in partnership with the archivists that we're working with is to get that more detailed information, such as, who the artists were or what the printing company was. Like, that'll be an additional layer that we'd like to add, way more in-depth information beyond, some of the physical attributes of those printed materials. We do have a show opening, an exhibit in partnership with Poster House, New York. We're one of the art lenders of a much larger show. It opens actually the end of next week, and we're lending a little over 30 of our oldest posters to this exhibit. And as part of their research, they even noted that a lot of the creators or designers of those posters are unknown. So I know that it is something that isn't as commonly found, but it's definitely a goal of ours to try to find as much information as we can as we add on those additional layers, to our research.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me just an example of types of stylistic trends in Black film poster art over time, given that you've seen so much of the collection? Like, what did they look like in the early decades of the 20th century versus like in middle and later decades?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. In the early part of the 20th centuries, there where Oscar Micheaux was making movies, say like the 30s and 40s, poster lobby cards and film stills were like a heavier stock than you would get for posters today. They were really cinematic in composition. It was very intentional. Almost looked like a painting for many of those. They were really big aspirational moments. The Black filmmakers and artists, they were fighting to be seen. So the materials, they carried a sense of spectacle. They were really big. We had some 3 sheets that are like 7, 8 feet tall posters.
Really?
And, by the mid-century, the distribution widened, the magazines and studio systems grew. Posters were more commercial. Then they started using graphic design, bold photographic collages, taglines. So you'll see that influence on the Black posters as well. And then by the 20th century, mass produced, find them on less heavy stock. And then you'll find video cassette posters as well once you get a little bit later. But the quality that was put into those early posters, you can really see a difference. The fact that those really have held up, some of the posters we have are almost 100 years old, speaks to the testament of the quality of those posters.
Yeah. Do you have any projects or exhibits you're currently working on that you'd like to promote?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one I just mentioned is actually in the New York area, us being a lender for the Poster House exhibit. Is called Act Black, From Stage to Screen. And that's going through early September. So that would be an amazing, opportunity for anybody in that area. We just recently are signing on to do a 3-part film series here in the Detroit area with a very tenured art house here called the Scarab Club, Motor City Cinematheque, and Campfire Collective, where we're going to show different shorts and feature films and then even musical selections for Black Music Month across the summer here in Detroit as a collaboration with them. And then 2 of our bigger events that are coming up in Detroit also, we have in August, as my brother mentioned, my dad was an avid vinyl collector. We're estimating we have, 12 to 15,000 records, many of which are non-archival for us. Like we're kind of paring down to some of the genres and artists that we'd like to keep within the collection. So we're actually having a pop-up called Digging in the Crates, where people will be able to come and, purchase some of the records that we're looking to sell and not maintain within the collection. And then our big fundraiser is in October, also in Detroit. It's going to be called Iconic. That's, I think, the one that you were thinking of with Paul Robeson. And we do have a poster, a traveling exhibit for Paul Robeson with posters, but this one is going to highlight both him and Harry Belafonte, Dorothy Dandridge, and Lena Horne, and just showcase, different artifacts that we have. That's our big fundraiser where we look to try to raise funds, to help support our overhead costs and invest in scholarships, for the youth, as well as continuing to archive and digitize, some of the film that we have within our collection. But other things people can get involved with, we are always looking for support from a donations perspective, and that does fuel our scholarships. We just awarded one in our father's name, our first Black Canon Legacy Scholarship, to an amazing young man from University of Michigan named Wallace Bowie III. Some of our films are vulnerable. So, another thing that support helps us with is, making sure that we don't lose those films. We did lose, some like from the Blaxploitation era, unfortunately, like, in terms of loss or color or integrity. So, looking to digitize those. And then, if people are just kind of looking for ways to get involved, there are a lot of things that they could do outside of donations, just engaging with us on social. We have a new trailer for a documentary we're working on our dad. We have merch and a record shop, all kind of ways, that outside of the events that people can get involved with. And the last one I'll mention is called Breakthrough in Black, which is a partnership with Exhibit Envoy, where they create replicas of some of the original, posters in print and create a tourable exhibit to, smaller institutions and museums that have, maybe a limited footprint or don't have the level of insurance, for some of those originals. And that's now available, for the next 2 years, I believe. And we've got 3 locations booked so far, between kicking off, later this year and early 2028. So there's a lot of different things got going on, but yeah, a lot of ways people can get involved as well.
Yeah. All right. Now we get to the series of questions I ask every guest. The first one, what songs got people on the dance floor when you were going out dancing at your peak?
I'll start. I'm a golden era hip hop type dude, so for me, it was like The Choice Is Yours, Black Sheep, Air Geek for President, Planet Rock. When he played those, you knew people were going to get up and dance. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just a couple years behind Ali, but I guess me and my friends was a little different in party music. We appreciated all of the music that he did, but as far as like dancing, and I don't know how common these are, like, larger scale, but Percolator was like a song that everybody wanted to dance to. Scrub the Ground, I have to say is one. And Godzilla is one that I think a lot of people here in Detroit would come and try to do the Detroit Jit. That was like the thing that everybody would come on the floor for.
Right. What is a Black cultural work that's an absolute classic but is underappreciated? It can be in any genre or medium.
Okay, I thought of a film on this one, and I know my sister's going to laugh because every time I say this movie, she's like, I'm not watching it. I'm like, it's good. You should watch it. It's underrated. I'm going with Fear of a Black Hat.
Oh, yeah.
My Rusty Cundy.
Yep.
I think no one really ever talks about it. They talk about CV4, Crush Groove, but that one, the different subjects he talked about from that satirical point of view, I thought it was brilliant. Even though it was low budget, I think it was underappreciated movie, and it doesn't get its due.
It's very specific to 90s hip hop fandom,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I love.
Yeah.
I might have to give it a try, but I've not seen it yet, but I'm now feel guilty. I have a thought, like I had a couple different ones, but just kind of thinking about the underappreciated aspect of it. I would say Hollywood Shuffle. I don't think Robert Townsend gets, you could even say Five Heartbeats, but I really say Hollywood Shuffle because of just all of the layers of messages that are in there. And I just don't feel like it got the respect or appreciation that it could, and him paving the way for like a lot of filmmakers that came after him. So I do think that particular movie is underappreciated. I thought it was a classic.
And I will say that you are not the first guest to mention that movie.
Okay. Yeah. But I wonder if Ali is the first to mention.
he is. Nobody said that one yet. And then what particular dish did your family make that you looked forward to the most?
Well, my dish, it doesn't really have any Southern roots or anything like that, but my mother made this tuna noodle salad. And I loved it. You eat it with crackers. If you got the good ones, sometimes you get the club or the Ritz crackers with it, or it's just saltines. But I've taken her recipe, taken it to the next level, added some shredded cheese to it, and my family loves it as well. So that's something that I always look forward to when she made it. And now the next generation is enjoying my twist on that recipe.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I really did like Mom's tuna noodle salad as well. I haven't made it here in a really long time, so I might have to do that. Mine is going to be from our dad. He made the best salmon croquettes They were so good. Anybody who ever had them, that's like one of their fondest memories. Matter of fact, when he passed and we had to make the announcement on social media, several people commented about the salmon croquettes, like, you know, as a fond memory. But for me, like, he would make it with fried potatoes and onions, and he would do these stovetop, like, fried biscuits. He would do them on the stovetop, and I, like, thoroughly miss that meal. Like, I make the salmon croquettes. I know Ali makes them as well. And I think we get close, you know, we know some of the things that he used to make them unique, how he made them. But yeah, I definitely miss those. That was a meal that I definitely look forward to.
Well, Alima and Ali, I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I want to thank you for all the work that you do. I have not yet been able to see one of your exhibits, but I know I will in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Ian. We really appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian.
I'd like to thank my guests again, Eiley J. Wheeler and Alima Wheeler-Trapp of the Black Canon. You can find them online at black-canon.com. Please be on the lookout for their exhibitions and fundraisers. It's an incredible organization that I think we all should support. One lesson I took away from this episode and this discussion was just how commitment and dedication can totally change the course of Black cultural history. Their father, James Wheeler, was just one person, but he decided as a young boy to start this collection, and now it's spawned an entire organization. Just the commitment of one dedicated person can make this huge contribution to Black cultural preservation and memory. Another lesson is that material preservation and material items matter. Cultural memory work is very necessary, but when we can, it's also vital to have tangible history, tangible artifacts that are harder to erase. I am a materialist at heart. As Ali said at one point, especially young people, there's something about something being tangible that makes things more valuable and real to them. As we've gotten rid of physical media, movies, music, I think that people value them less. Look at the way that people treat streaming music compared to how people treat vinyl, CDs, cassettes, whatever. And look at the way people think about streaming movies as if it's just background. So the material matters. And as much as we can, we should preserve our culture in tangible ways. And finally, Ali mentioned what the early film posters look like. Ali also spoke about what the early Black film movie posters looked like, how much care was put into them. They were huge. They were printed on sturdy, thick stock, and they were cinematic. All the care and work that these creators put into these posters was on display. And so much care went into them that a lot of them, he said, are still preserved to this day, almost 100 years later. Contrast that with what he said the later posters looked like once commercial pressures came into play. Cheaper, more mass-produced, less care, less artistic. And so it's not a surprise, but the lesson is create while you can. Commercial pressures often shackle and diminish true creativity and expression. That's it for this episode. Please subscribe, like, rate, review on whatever platform you use to listen. Visit the website blacketcpod.com. Until next time.